So one of the keys to tapping into gaming audiences that everyone's raving about, these super valuable, young, impressionable demographics, is marketing. Obviously, making the most of your brand and the activities that you do and getting it in front of those eyes in the right way. And today I'm joined by somebody who's great in that arena, obviously much more clued up than myself, which is why he's here. So we've got Thomas, Director of Marketing at OTK. So thank you for joining me, my man.
Yeah, excited to be on, Adam. It's a pleasure. I've been following a lot of your journalism stuff, and I've been a big fan of Hitmarker throughout the last few years, and I've been utilizing not like actually shilling this, but like it's genuinely something that I've told people like it's good. It's weird how many like students don't know about it. I'm like, yo, you can get a job this way without having to like
it's all there.
ask. Yeah. But anyways, yeah, excited to be on here and talk about branding. I think it's one of the pillars that really defines the good from the bad and from the mediocre and from the greats. And I'm excited to just chat about everything in between. I think it'll be really exciting for people to hear about.
Yeah, man. So we've followed each other for ages, but I don't think we've ever had like a proper conversation. So it's about time, and I'm gonna start this off with a question you probably get a lot, and it's probably annoying, but like, how the hell do you actually put your finger on what OTK is? Because depending on where you look, you get kind of different results. So some places says like influencer network. One place, I think it may be LinkedIn or maybe even the website, where it says the number one live streaming and media production company on the internet. And now that is obviously a very bold stance to say the number one media production company on the internet. So like, what's kind of the ethos behind the company there, and what's what?
Yeah, sure. So a lot of that is just outward facing B2B marketing. There's whenever you're marketing a brand, you're always marketing it to two different kinds of groups, right? You have your audience, the people that watch it kind of need to understand who you are, but also the people that are interested in giving you money, like in making this transaction, investing money into you, or wanting to partner with you or all this stuff. And it's really important to take kind of like a really important foot stance on how you position yourself. And unlike most orgs, we can actually make that claim that we are the number one, right? Back in April, we were the number one most watched gaming community on Twitch. I think we had like 25.3 million hours watched, and the closest to us was like Loaded, which with like 20 million, right? And they have 34 different creators on the roster. We have 11, right? I think the second closest was TSM with like 64 creators and 14 million hours watched, okay. Right? So we can easily make that claim. And we, over time, we've produced stuff like we have the Parasocial, the Apex Invitational, Rift, which is a League of Legends creator activation, Schooled, Game Day, which was sponsored by Game Fuel, which is like an IRL sports thing, right? We've continuously pushed the narrative on Twitch and creating these like unique marketable moments, but also not marketable moments, but just moments for fans to kind of engage with their favorite creators and Twitch personalities in a different environment than they're traditionally used to, right? And we do it better, I'd say, than anyone else. You can't point a finger at an org that says that does it better on Twitch.
No, but this doesn't necessarily say that, though. This says live streaming and media production company, and there are many media production companies.
Right. I think it's just the biggest thing that we focus around, which is that we're like creator operated and creator focused rather than like an ESL or like a Boom TV that is paying talent. This is like all like it's naturally done in many cases. And we generally want to create a genuine natural environment where people don't feel pressured that like, oh, well, I need to get paid 5K, so I'm going to appear on this live stream and, hopefully do my best, right? And I think that's the biggest difference that separates us from like everything. And a lot of the different brands are actually creators that jump onto these like shows and stuff like that genuinely enjoy it. They want to be there. They want to take part. Like we had so many applicants for like Schooled or you name it, so it's big. And then in terms of like what you say, like it's more so again how we position ourselves compared to everyone else. We want to seem like people, you hit those key buzzwords, you hit those things that people want to hear, and then they just dive in and then they get interested in it. But also just helps us like really separate ourselves from like esports organizations, and that is the biggest factor, because while brands like 100 Thieves, TSM, Liquid, Cloud9, you name it, they have their own unique niche in the space. We occupy this whole different subsection to the point where like even Twitter doesn't really know how to categorize us. So like they've paired us up with like sidemen and offline TV, which is fair, right? And kind of compare us to those groups rather than traditional esports groups, because honestly, we would blow them out of the water in terms of engagement also on Twitter. But they don't want to show that to them. But yeah, like we're in this like different category that just gives brands a different opportunity that, you know, maybe have been burnt by esports, because, you know, you just hear it all the time about how like, you know, brands will invest in an org and just see like absolutely no return, get burnt, and then never look at the industry again. We're like this alternative where, you know, brand managers or marketing executives can justify it. They're like, it's different than esports, but it's within this gaming like creator live streaming like center, like, you know, like we're like kind of at the center of like live streaming and gaming culture, primarily a little bit more focused on Twitch. We're like moving into YouTube and stuff like that. So I know that was a very long-winded answer to what you were talking about, but like it's like a deviation away from esports and gaming, but staying within that culture realm and bringing people in. Like, you know, we've had pro players come on, we've had semi pros or kind of like hybrid creators, like for example Cypher PK appear on a lot of our stuff, you know. So we got a whole range of different talent that comes in and participates, but our own creators themselves, you know, they have a diverse talent pool and what they can do and stuff like that. So I know, super long-winded answer, and there is a challenge to like marketing that, so we have to kind of dumb it down and simplify it, right? Because, you know, you and me know about these big names, we know about like everything, but when you have to explain it to someone, for example, from Coinbase, right? Which was a fantastic partner for the schools, our school series. You know, they don't really know about it, so we gotta simplify it into terms for them to get that conversation rolling, and for them to pitch to their CMO and stuff like that.
Well, number one, as someone who's asked questions to people for like 4.5 years, you don't have to apologize for giving long answers, because we appreciate those more than the short answers where we have to, it's like drawing blood out of a stone. So one, I appreciate that. Two, as you say, I think it illustrates how much you've got going on, and how hard it is to put you collectively in one category, in one box. And thirdly, so would you say like a big part of the business's event operation and production? Because
Yeah, I'd say
that's definitely
sure.
definitely outside of the esports org model, right?
Yeah, so it's kind of there is an overlap. So I know a lot of companies have internal production teams. I know 100 Thieves, Team Liquid, TSM. They have internal production teams that like I think was it Team Liquid has like One Up. I know Envy has like the whole team behind the esports arena that also helps them produce stuff, right? So it's nothing new in this space, but we just actually have like people that their job, their hard skills, the things that they've been doing for a very long time is producing stuff and creating the back end content. So we let our talent be, you know, talent, and let the producers and the people that have been doing it for a long time execute at a very high level, which just creates a very genuine, authentic end product that everyone enjoys and people are happy with. And there's no like super scuffed, you know, weird audio and stuff like that, right? So it's like a hybrid of that. And then I think, you know, I think our production team now is like 8 full-time employees, a few part-time, and then our creative team is that works on production assets is like 4 in total, right? And we're slowly spreading out from just like live streams. Like live streams, I think, are the big hook in to, like, for example, to anchor in brands in, to gain those eyeballs, to gain those clips, you know, that get people excited, aware of OTK and all that stuff, you know, and draw people in. And then the consistency of the creators themselves as their own individual streams, our YouTube channel, and our just more general content churn that happens quarterly. We average around 2 shows a quarter, and then we have individual events. For example, like we have the Apex Invitational, we have the OTK Smite Invitational coming up, where Hi-Rez we're partnering up with Hi-Rez for 100K prize pool. We're going to pull in these creators, right? And where we can activate these like singular events. But then we have these big flagship events that we're planning. So it's all about scaling efficiently to draw people in, and then confirm that like, oh, I really like this, what else do they have? And then to go bigger, and make it more impactful and cooler, and kind of like almost like a snowball, right? Sorry. Hey, buddy. my cat loves it when I talk to someone. He's like all over the desk and he's like, I gotta get involved. But if I'm working, he's not so much.
Of course.
But yeah, like I think the expo was a really big like what do you got, like the peak of like what we can do, right? In terms of, it was a 5 hour long production. We have over 300,000 concurrent viewers at peak, and we averaged 273,000 viewers throughout the 4 hours. That's comparable to like LCS playoffs, right? So it's like we're really trying to do that, but also get people invested in the OTK brand, and it going back to the creators, right? So we want it to be like a self-sustaining model that benefits everyone in it, right? The team that works behind it feels like they're always leveling things up. The creators get the benefit from participating in like projects that break just the traditional mold, right? They get they interact with new creators. They feel like they're building something, and I think that's the biggest difference between us and also a lot of other. Hey, buddy. Um, other almost pulled an alinity there. Other orgs is at the end of the day, it's creator owned, and if the creators have an idea that they want to like execute, the team's goal at the end of the day, that and my job is, how do we amplify it? How do we make it cool? How do we literally make it the best event possible? So then everybody wins. And it's just so much, it's so exciting to be a part of. And it's like the inverse that you see at a lot of companies where, brands like TSM or Team Liquid, they're paying the creators. And then they're also like literally harping them for like, come up with an idea so we can pitch or we can do or anything like that. The whole expo idea was Asmongold's idea. It just took us 6 months to build to fruition. And thanks to our fantastic partners over at WePlay, we were even able to bring it to the next level and stuff like that. So that's a big thing that I think where we have that edge and how we really are defining the space. And we'll probably see this happen again within the next few years, of more creators coming together. Like you see offline TV slowly starting to build more of like a company around themselves.
Right.
So we'll see where that goes. But yeah, that's kind of where we're at and how it kind of all funnels in together as a brand.
Yeah, and like a Sidemen are example of really building a business around themselves now, obviously with like Sides where they've got like their own ghost kitchen stuff, which I think
Yeah.
was influenced by Mr. Beast, obviously with Beast Burger, and then they've got Exotics Vodka and then Side Plus and stuff as well, right? Like it's more than just being like a stream team now,
Mhm.
but especially with like OTK. So the way you've described it, it sounds to me like beyond just being a group of streamers, you're creating events which are basically moments, and those moments are incredible for marketing. If you can get the sponsors convinced, right? Like, no, you want to be involved in this because we're going to have 250,000 people watching this throughout, and that's a lot of
Yeah.
people, and they're all really invested in these people that are on this broadcast.
Yeah, like,
Like that seems to
it's
make a lot of sense.
yeah, we recently got all the data back from our partners in terms of like the viewership for the expo, right? And you pick the two biggest clubs in either Europe or like the biggest American football stadiums, right? And we doubled those stadiums in terms of viewership for that event. Like in perspective, that's insane that a live stream, a bunch of group of just, scuffed, comedians slash fun time gamers were able to pull this big of an audience to come in, which by the way, 30% was female. All right. So it's not all just dudes hanging out in their mom's basement like this, the cliche stuff is, right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
it's a genuine audience of people coming in. So it's always cool to see that. Come to life. And like you mentioned, the Sidemans are building products. We're also building products, right? So for example, shows, it's an IP that's sellable, right? And it's replicable. We can adapt it, stuff like that. But in the future, you'll see a little bit more. I think you'll see, individual brand. You see some creators, they create their own like kind of brand. Well, there was like Reflect by Valkyrie, which is kind of a big flop, right?
Uh,
Uh, so but you see some successes
you
like
see where it's
cypher
going.
cypher PK with his brand Mellow Umbrella, where it's his own fashion brand. It's separate from his brand. It's something that he's marketing, selling to like an anime lifestyle audience. They have a whole team behind it, stuff like that. I think you'll see a lot of more organization and creator groups start forming their own brands. And I'll give you like a little sneak peek around August, early August. OTK's got a really fun product that we're excited to launch in partnership with a bunch of people. We've been working really hard on it. And I think it's going to be the start of a big shift where you're going to see a lot of creator owned brands in the space. And at the end goal, like that's where you want to be able to self sustain. It's like, why take $2 million, for example, from a brand when you could create a brand that has $6 million revenue because you're utilizing it effectively. You're not restricted by what you can say, how you can market it, all that stuff, and it's genuine and authentic. And at the end of the day, it's a good product, which is the biggest thing that I think Valkyrie's team missed. Is it needs to be a genuinely good product, and I think
Yeah,
you can
start
sell
with
it.
that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah, if you can do the best marketing in the world and have the biggest people attached to it, if the product's no good, then you're probably not going to shift too much of it for a long term at least. You know.
Right. And I think that's what one thing that I think a lot of people don't talk about or actually know is OTK says no to a ton of brands. Like you should see sometimes like the amount of people who just say, no, we're not interested in working with you because A, your product's either garbage, we don't believe in your like what you stand for, stuff like that. We're happy to just, eat the cost of the production and be able to do something, but
Hmm.
have the actual brands that we care about and like respect. Boy, it is a whole 180. So back when I worked with Optic and Outlaws, we would do backflips for the most weirdest brands ever. And you see that at orgs, like no shot at any of these brands that people are building, but sometimes you'll see these orgs shilling like random companies, like random things, like super like for just a few bucks because they desperately need the money. Where it's the inverse at
Hmm.
OTK, where we're like, hey, if your product's good, we'll work with you, right? And also, it's like a level of validity, right? Chipotle was a fantastic partner. PepsiCo is and continue to be a fantastic partner for us, right? They started off with just Game Fuel for us, Mountain Dew Game Fuel, and then they added in Mountain Dew, and then they added Gatorade in because they like, whoa, working with OTK is actually really good for our brands, crazy, and stuff like that. But and being able to say no, I think is one of the most powerful things that esports orgs just can't afford to do.
They're not afforded that luxury yet, for
Yeah.
sure.
Um, and
Because like we've got organizations partner with like L'Oreal, like hair care brands. You know, like
yeah.
it doesn't really make a lot of sense, does it?
Well, so there's a two factors to that, right? Depending on where they are, right? I think most of the L'Oreal brands are partnered in EU, where,
Yes, yes.
for example, in countries like Spain, France, Germany, men's self care is like on the rise, especially also in the US. They're targeting specific demographics and like in different ways. I think L'Oreal Europe markets a lot different than L'Oreal in the United States.
Right. Okay.
Um, and I'm trying to think which brand was it Vitality? I
I
can't
have
remember.
Vitality in my mind, so we both landed there. So I'd say so.
Yeah, and it was probably like a bigger push for the French market and stuff like that, which is always interesting to see. And I think there's like actually a quick pivot to branding in EU. Branding in
Hmm.
EU and marketing yourself in EU as a gaming organization is much different than in North America. People think it's the same. People think it's like similar, and it changes from region to region, even to like the Middle East, MEA, Singapore slash the Southeast Asia, to even China and Japan and Korea. Like if you look at it, it's truly amazing like how different how like geographic barriers
Hmm.
affect marketing. And for example, T1 is a very interesting case study because they're super Korea, like they have this legacy League of Legends team, but then they have like a North American like Valorant team,
Yeah,
right?
it's
And they
strange.
try to yeah, and then they had like creator. They have MKLeo, which is a Super Smash Bros. Player, and it's just like they're like tearing their fan base into two different directions. But hey, if that's what they want, all the power to them. But they're just missing out on putting all their eggs into one basket. And it's good to
Right.
diversify, but sometimes I'm very questioning the decision. Usually, there's like a monetary gain in the sense that like the publisher or the way the publisher covers the cost, that it makes it more effective. It was a reason why Cloud9 was in Rainbow Six Korea for a very long time, because they had the benefit of all the money that they were getting paid, and same with like PUBG and stuff like that. And of course
Exactly.
my cats decide to rumble as soon, as soon as I bring this up. um but yeah, and then Europe is marketed really heavily depending on regions. So um specific countries. I think the only org that used to be able to kind of cover all the regions was Fnatic, and that slowly died away. And G2 has been like now the like global EU.
Yeah,
Just
because they're expanding into New York, right? So,
yeah,
like
that's another
specifically
thing.
New York, so they've got their North American
Yeah.
expansion, which will be very interesting because I don't know how locked they are region wise with their fans
Mhm.
versus like a Vitality, for example.
Yeah, I'd say G2 compared to like for example like a Vitality or like a Heretics in Spain, right?
Hmm.
Their range is a lot bigger, but this is the first time we see an EU company leaping into NA. I'm trying to think if there was another example of that before.
Probably
uh
not effectively.
yeah.
No,
So I hope
be
Carlos
interesting.
and his team at G2 can break it, because I think it's better in terms of for esports. The more we have like a cross pollination of fans, traditional sports have made that leap back and forth across the Atlantic, right? With the NFL in the UK,
Yeah.
with the Premier League in EU. I mean, coming into NA, vice versa. So I'm for it. I'm just excited to see how everything plays out, because it is a risk, but I always say I'd rather see esports brands take more risks rather than just play it safe.
So for you guys at OTK, are you
Yeah.
like firmly focusing on North America for the time
Yeah,
being or forever? Like, what's
sure.
the play there?
Oh, okay. So interesting question. So, our audience naturally is North American, just due to their creators and kind of the culture of the creators, I'd say, because while we do have like an overlap with some of the UK and Spanish audience from like Latin America and stuff like that, North America is just our primary like audience. A lot of people forget that we're only a year and a half old.
Hmm.
Like, we're still super young compared to a lot of these organizations and names and brands. And my philosophy is we're going to take it one step at a time. Let's make sure that we have a strong football foothold on the North American market before we even think about like going past it. Like, make sure we have all our, everything set up, and then let's just take it one step at a time. If anything, I think we'll um, push towards creating content that appeals to either like a Portuguese or Spanish audience before we move to Europe,
Right.
because we're so creator focused, and we talked a little bit about creator culture. That it's and how different it is in EU versus NA. I think it's just something that, if anything, will bring in an EU creator, which is just not in our
Bring me in. Come on, let's go.
some journalists. Let's go. It's just hard because we want to do a lot of physical activations in person, and it's just brutal
Right.
having to fly back and forth from Europe, even if it's like 7 hour difference. It's
Yeah. But
it's hard.
you've announced recently an investment from WePlay, a Ukrainian esports uh, operator of events and stuff, right? Like, so surely there are some opportunities that come along with that. I know there was a facility announced alongside the deal, which I think is LA, right? Did I read that
Yes. Yeah.
correctly?
There's
Yeah.
the
So you've obviously remained NA focused there, but maybe the WePlay connection with like Ukraine, maybe when things die down a little in the future over there. Are there
Mhm.
opportunities that you can kind of leap out there on a marketing front?
Oh yeah. I mean, in general, we play opens up so many. It's actually one of the reasons we partnered with them, is they just open up so many production and physical space facilities for us compared to any other offers that we got. It was very just mutual and genuine. So in terms of what we can do with we play out in Europe, I think it is really good. Like you mentioned, things have to kind of die down with everything going on in Ukraine, and I really hope that we can activate in Europe, because we do have a decent fan base. There's that like Forsen fan base that really enjoys OTK content, which or LSF, that comes from the market, and we've noticed that from just like merchandise sales, people are like, way we were blown away with some of the EU numbers, which is always exciting for us.
Yeah,
I think
because
in
you
the
make a
short,
killing on shipping costs and stuff. I'm sure
I
it's
wish.
awful for us.
Unfortunately, well, we're not making any money, right? It's literally going to
Right.
FedEx or DHL, you
Yeah,
name
yeah.
it, right?
Whatever. I
Uh,
think you're marking it up twice as much.
um, that's kind of something that we're working on. Is well, actually, with solving shipping to EU is a really big priority to us. We're going to be working with WePlay and their partners on hopefully establishing like an EU store. That's like step one, I'd say. Production stuff happening in EU, I think, opens up some, like we talked about, like a lot of these shows, right? The reason these shows work well in NA is because if we bring in talent from NA, it's easy. It's like a 3 hour travel. So if we have like a longer, like a show EU edition, we are able to bring in these EU broadcasters that normally don't get to do beyond these like physical live activations, and it adds a little bit more fun and flavor. So,
Hmm.
I think that's on the horizon for us. I'm excited to see what we can build together with WePlay when it comes to Europe. But right now, I think we're going to really primarily focus on the Los Angeles studio,
Yeah.
and then hopefully in the future build something out in Austin and kind of have like a third base for WePlay / OTK, as well as be able to collaborate with this growing esports gaming market in Austin. I believe like TSM, FaZe, and a bunch of other big brands have creators / streamers and players down there. So it was like, why not take advantage of it?
And I've got two things I want to go on. So I'm going to mention them now to remember them, but we'll go one at once.
Sure.
So one of them is you mentioned like Spanish and Portuguese language, like Mr. Beast. His content he's created like language specific channels now where he's getting things like dubbed over. Is that the kind of thing you're thinking of? Or like, or at least how do you feel about that move
Sure.
for like a purely content play?
Sure. From a content play, it's something that I really want to, I think, invest in the long term. I want to do it right. I don't want to go cheap, and it's something that I think OTK can benefit in the long run of stuff, right? Because you normally hit kind of like a soft plateau of how you can reach your audience. So I think what we'll do is we'll start off like with VOD content, like these like top tier produced videos that we normally do, and have go the Mr. Beast route in terms of having like dubbed voice actors and stuff like that. Translator, I believe Doctor Disrespect recently announced the Spanish YouTube channel too.
And Sidemen launched one as well.
Yeah, and I think it's just one of those things where if you're going to invest money into content, why not double like try it in a different language, because it's relatively, I'd say, inexpensive because the content's already produced. It just you want to find a good partner to execute it, and then just push it as well as promote it and stuff like that, which I think is something that we want to just work on planning out, structuring out, before we even like commit to any financial numbers. Like, what is the end goal gain of this, right? And I think once we've launched a few of these products that we've built internally at OTK, and we need to start hitting the market outside of the US, is when we'll probably make that move. We want to scale it efficiently. Like if you think about Mr. Beast, right? He hit a cap on NA speaking like regions. So the next thing for him is to move on to the next one, and it just works. And I think it's his success in that region is really going to change the way content is produced now. But I think the orgs that focus on executing it in the right way, investing it and taking it slow and not rushing into it, will succeed. I want to give big props to Dunk over at TSM and what he's done with the TSM Japan channel / content pool, which is funny because back when I was at Optic, we made a play for India, and it was the most biggest disaster I've ever experienced in my life.
The cheating scandal, the word file.
Word.exe, baby.
Oh god, that's a classic. That's an esports classic moment for the wrong reasons, of course.
Yeah. Super unfortunate.
And you had Optic, you had Gears, you had a Mexican Gears team as well, right? And you had the female Brazilian roster as well.
Yes,
I'm pretty sure.
We had a female CS roster, I believe. And then we had 3 content creators out in Southeast Asia
that were on Facebook, right?
Yes, which
I paid so much attention back then.
Okay, so some not to burn bridges, but we caught the agency that was managing them paying for views on Facebook. So yeah, we quickly, so it was funny because it was around the same time where the cheating accusation happened, right? And we're just like, okay, F it. It is like, I remember the Office situation. It was like these third party ran things that like branding that effectively were branded Optic are basically causing more of a headache than anything else. Let's just axe it, get it before it becomes bad. And it was bad. I don't know, it just turned into like I think, again, when we talk about scaling efficiently, at that time Optic had very high aspirations, but was too quickly to just throw money at it and hope that solved the problem, which, as most orgs and most brands and companies that are across the world learn, that just because you throw money at it won't always solve the problem.
Yeah, it's but you can see at least the thinking there and how that's naturally, I guess, being replicated in the content game, as we mentioned with Mr. Beast and stuff, right? Like trying to get your brand in front of a larger pool of eyeballs, at least in a natural way. It makes a lot of sense. It's just it's a big commitment. And one thing you said earlier on about especially with events, I'm pretty sure you said like you want it to have like a snowball effect. And obviously we mentioned Mr. Beast, who I think he's at a kind of a real like tough point now where everything he does right has to be bigger than the last.
Mm.
And how the hell do you keep that going without just spending unholy amounts of money? I guess being creative is part of it, and I don't have that gene per se. But like
Mhm.
naturally, there's going to come a point where surely you think like, okay, we've reached the pinnacle now. There's no way we can top what we've just done.
I think that's the content um paradox that every single company experiences. You name it: Netflix, Hulu, traditional TV,
Mm.
radio, right? Even creators themselves can't get over this, right? And I think there you just have to scale it to the point where it's just sustainable rather than just go for this endless need of higher, bigger, better, higher, bigger,
Yeah,
better. And
yeah.
I think the more quickly people are comfortable with that realization that you eventually do hit a top that you cannot break, is to just diversify your brand effectively,
Hmm.
but make sure that it doesn't lose the charm that people cared about. And it's a very hard reality for some people to face, but I think it's just the only way in the long run your brand will survive. And I think brands like, I hate to say it, like Nike, Adidas, you name it, have succeeded in that level on a more manufacturer brand perspective, like on a raw brand thing, like continuing your brand to live on.
Hmm.
Where media brands have struggled really hard. I mean, you've experienced that with Netflix this past year, where the stock plummeted. People, there's this constant urgency of making more money and stuff like that. They can spend billions on shows. They can spend, I think they spend like 60% of their budget, if not 70, is like on the shows itself. Like, it's
I don't
insane how
know on
much they
that.
spend on the content itself, right? So
Mm.
you do hit this ceiling. I think for orgs, it's going to come up a little bit sooner than later. But I think it's more about just making sure that the end product, that 200,000 people that are watching genuinely enjoy the product. I would, as an individual, not as OTK, I would rather have 200,000 people that genuinely enjoy the show, will watch it year over year, talk about it with their friends, care about it, and be genuinely invested in it, rather than a 500,000 people that just tune in for that one moment just to see 30 seconds of it. That's
I
that's
get
that's
you.
that's my 2 cents on it. Um, but everyone's different. Everyone's got a different perspective of what a brand is and what a brand's goals are. I'm
Hmm.
just very fortunate that my brand vision slash goals align with OTKs and what we're trying to achieve.
Got you. And the second thing, I actually managed to remember it this whole time somehow, is so you mentioned like the multiple facilities, and obviously you're already running events with other creators outside of OTK per se. But like, how important do you think in-person activations are with fans and the creators? Do you see that being a big part of what you do at OTK moving forward?
Yeah, so it's something that we definitely want to test the waters and make sure that we can scale efficiently. Security is our highest priority every single time, just like in traditional like media. Whenever you have
Hmm.
actors, personalities, musicians, you saw the stuff that happened to, unfortunately, to not Chris Rock, the Dave Chappelle recently,
Yeah,
where
yeah.
someone came on stage and tackled him. There's crazy fans. There's a lot of passionate fans. There's a lot of exciting fans. We love them all, but there's that 1% of 0.1% of that 1% that are batshit. So safety is a big priority for us whenever we produce anything, and we always want to make sure that the talent is comfortable and everything. So once we get to, I think, to a good point where we can manage all that, bringing in people like fans to events will be huge. Doing a lot more meet and greets, but also just making sure that we're following all protocols, because we just don't want to be labeled as that super spreader event, or there's always that like tiny thing. It hurts the
Right.
brand in the long run, and we want to make sure that fans that do attend the event, it's genuinely like exciting for them, and they leave with happy, like that they're
Yeah.
happy.
Yeah.
Because, for example, for the expo, bro, we could have easily charged $300 a ticket, and we would have sold that little space out easily without even like thinking about it, honestly, right? But the fans wouldn't have had as good of an experience because the show was tailored to be, digitally consumed rather than physically. So
Right.
I think in the future, it's something that we'll love to explore with a lot of the projects that we're going to be announcing later this year. Some of which I think will be easier to replicate in person rather than the others, but it's more so like time will tell. And like I said, safety of our creators is by far the highest priority for us whenever we produce anything.
Got you. I want to switch gears a little bit as we hurtle towards the last 10 minutes or so.
Sure.
So, casting your thoughts back across your entire career in marketing so far, what would you say has been your biggest win or like favorite project that you've led? And what would you say has been your biggest failure or teachable moment? We can reframe it to seem more positive. Like, so
Okay.
what's like the highlight and the low light of marketing so far for you?
Sure. So 2 highlights for me personally. We can start high, and then we'll jump into like a
We'll
failure,
get
and
the
then
good
end
news
it
out
on
the
a
way
high note.
first.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No, we'll do good, bad, good. All right.
yeah, the bad sandwich. There we go.
So for one of the projects that I left, kind of on a good note, heading into my agency from my previous marketing / creative agency, because I did take kind of like a deviation break away from like esports / content creators, working at a agency that focused on marketing / creative for esports gaming and nerd culture, was like the spectrum.
Yeah,
And there I had an awesome experience working with Cypher PK and creating Metal Umbrella, this genuine authentic clothing brand from start to finish, working with him and his team on building out the narrative, the story, everything behind it, and going beyond the logo. I think people forget that a name can only get you so far. You need to have the vision and the roadmap to execute it, as well as you need to be able to like approach it of like, how do we stand out? And I think that's the biggest thing that marketers forget, is it's so easy to copy what everyone else is doing in the space that you just end up kind of blending in. And I think what we were able to accomplish with Metal Umbrella, it was like a very big kind of pivot point for a lot of creators. And I'm really happy that both Ali and Daniela, Cypher and Daniela, Ali is his first name, were excited by the brand, and they were very happy with how it turned out. And that was a big win for me, being able to kind of take a brand from like just a concept where they came to us with like, we want to make a brand, but we don't know where to go. And I was like, cool, let's guide you there. And it was
say
like
no
a
more.
yeah. Biggest learning experience was there's 2. It was right when I got started. I did a little bit of social media management as well as marketing. It was kind of like back in the day, early 2015, where you do like wear multiple hats, whether you're marketing, you're doing social, whether you're social, you're doing marketing, back and forth. We had some players leave the organization. There was this dinky little team called Flashpoint Esports. Players leave because they actually were getting picked up by an actual team, like that had money and stuff like that. And I misspelled careers. I wrote carriers.
Right.
And I just got obliterated by our owner at the time. A little bit over the top, I'd say, for just a spelling error that, like, honestly anyone could have made. Because, you read it, careers, you're like thinking you're in the moment. You send it, right?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, it's always now kind of taught me to kind of, sometimes you just need to take a step back a little bit, pause, breathe in, and be like, all right, is this good? And then like continue with it. That's like more of like a social thing. And in terms of like marketing, never stop learning, I'd say, is like a big kind of learning thing. From like kind of also to bridge into that, is like whether I was at my agency at Optic, even at OTK, I'm always like learning. Like my biggest takeaway is like, I need to catch up, I need to stay on top of everything that's happening, and like keep up to date. It's that's part of the challenge and fun of like digital marketing and branding right now on with the internet and how fast everything's moving. And then final win was helping OTK rebrand. I think me and Evan Edgar, who was the man behind the logo, as well as helped bring everything creatively. There's a whole big Behance that you can check out if you look it up. Taking a brand, like a brand direction from, hey, we have 8 people that have all different 8 visions of what this brand is, including myself, right? And being able to cross-reference it, like all these ideas, all these things, into one point where it works for everyone, and then it can actually function as a brand and evolve and grow, is the highlight right now of my career, and the direction we've been able to take OTK and the foundation that we've set up for it. A lot of brands think in the now. We thought about like what's going to be, in 6 months, in a year, in 2 years, in 3 years, right? Because if you're not thinking about that, then you're going to set your brand up to fail in the long run. And you kind of see that with some brands. Not to knock on Andbox and the NYXL brand, but they rebranded. Clearly they didn't really think about like what their strategy was. Even now I'm kind of like, what is
It's
like
still a bit
split?
messy.
Yeah, like NYFU. Like I'm like, wait, so parent company NYXL, NY Excelsior, SYL, and then why not just confusion? Anyways.
It's a bit messy.
Right. Anywho, I'll kind of like leave it on there. Is like biggest success was helping OTK rebrand, and I'm really excited to see where the brand goes in the next few years.
Awesome stuff. And to wrap this up, I want to talk about your YouTube channel a little bit, which of course you can plug. But like you're doing some interesting like personal content over there.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I wondered if you wanted to speak about that a little bit. Like, what are you aiming to do? Is that part of your learning? Are you dissecting things yourself, trying to get the lessons from it and regurgitating it for others? What's kind of the approach there?
So it's a hybrid. It actually initially stemmed from I work with creators. I interact with creators all the time in the sense of my job and my role. And I want to be able to understand what are their biggest pain points and what
Right.
what are the big problems that they have normally as an individual, as a creator, what processes they go through, because it helps me understand their thought process as well as kind of relate to them a little bit. And that was like the initial start to it. But then I realized I would get hit up on LinkedIn all the time. It's actually funny. Some kid today, it was just people asking me like, how did you get started? Can I break in? What's the best thing to do next? Et cetera, et cetera. Like, how do I really love gaming and I want to be a part of it. Like, but I know what to do. Right. And I realized there's this massive hole of just, there's nowhere to go. There's nothing. So I was like, I was also,
There's Hitmarker.
There's Hitmarker now. There's Hitmarker now. Well, I meant in like education and I've plugged you guys in my video that has done really well in terms of like how to get started into esports / gaming. And it was more so like it's now like turned into like a passion project where I can talk about like my marketing theories, a lot of the things that are happening, break it down so people can understand it. A big inspiration of this whole channel was actually Devin Nash, former CEO of CLG. Now he runs his own influencer network called Nova, I believe. But like being able to speak this language and break it down for people, I think is very interesting, and I always like it. But I also test myself of like, what do I know? Right. And how do I present it to people? And this like repetition of learning. Right. And now I can put it to something where that learning is showcased and I can talk about it and stuff like that. And it's a good for me to look back. Like, what did I think like 6 months ago? What did I say a year ago? Did my hot take, about G2 becoming as valuable as, Real Madrid? Can I clip that in 30 years and like be able to show it, like anything? So
yeah, for sure.
It's about also just having fun. I genuinely enjoy it. It's a challenge and it links all into everything that I want to do. Also, it's really good for getting recruiters to hit you up. Not TSM, 100 Thieves. In the sense that like, people will find your content. People will like, recognize you. And it's like, marketers have the hardest challenge, right? Designers, they have portfolios, LinkedIn can only get you so much. A resume can only get you so much. This content is an example of what I stand for. And it's why I enjoy going on podcasts like this and talking with people, because like, can leave an impression, but also motivate people that you can get a job in gaming. It's cool. It's fun. It's interesting.
And there are plenty of jobs as well. There are literally hundreds being uploaded.
Tons of jobs.
So there are
if only there was a platform that people could check out where they can find...
that would really hit the mark. That would, if there was such a platform.
Yeah.
But I will put your YouTube channel in the description, so if anyone wants to go and check it out and subscribe, they feel free to do so. Are there any last words? Anything you feel you need to plug before we end this?
No, go make sure you're following OTK. We're doing a lot of cool stuff. Just the easiest thing to see everything that I'm kind of working on, because I don't really post too much on social, like other than just random shit.
The organization's content is your portfolio in a sense.
Yeah,
right.
In collaboration with a lot of fantastic team members. I
Right.
cannot stress this enough. I'm not a one-man show. We have a team of like 25 people that work every single day to make sure that all this happens. And I think that's one of the biggest things that I also appreciate about all the stakeholders, which I mean is just like all the founders of OTK in terms of the creators. They're always making sure that we deserve, like, we get credit, where I think a lot of esports organizations, like the CEO, tends to take like all the credit and all the
Yep.
burden. But I think
Yep.
the guys have done a very good job showing us a lot of love publicly, which I appreciate too so much, because at the end of the day, we're a team, want to make sure everyone gets their fair share of the love.
Make them feel valued, and respected. I
Yeah.
appreciate that. That sounds awesome. And man, thank you very much for taking the time. As always, this is on audio platforms as well as on YouTube, so you can go listen as well as watch it if you wish to do so. I recommend doing both. Give it a listen, then come watch it later on. This is another episode of Make Your Mark. We'll be back next week for another one. Thank you for watching and listening.